I was really nervous, so Mel gave me a few puffs of his cigar to try to relax me.
She was the mermaid who made us believe in magic, the android who haunted our dreams. For one glorious decade, she was everywhere, lighting up movie screens with that unforgettable presence. Then, just when Hollywood still wanted her, she started to disappear. This is the rise and fall of Daryl Hannah, the shy girl who found movies. Daryl Christine Hannah was born on December 3, 1960, in Chicago, Illinois, to Susan Jean Metzger, a school teacher who later became a producer, and Donald Christian Hannah, who owned a tugboat and barge company. From the outside, she seemed like any other child. But inside, Daryl was struggling with demons nobody around her could fully understand. She was painfully shy, emotionally isolated, finding it hard to connect with the world. School was difficult. Simple social situations felt overwhelming. While other children played easily together, Daryl felt separated by an invisible wall. As a young girl, she was diagnosed with autism at a time when the condition was barely understood and deeply stigmatized. Her parents divorced when she was young, and her mother married businessman Gerald Wexler, brother of renowned cinematographer Haskell Wexler. Daryl grew up with siblings Dawn and Paige Hannah and maternal half-sister Tanya Wexler. The doctors who examined young Daryl urged her parents to institutionalize her and put her on heavy medication. Her mother refused. Instead, Susan temporarily relocated with her daughter to Jamaica, hoping the change might help Daryl find herself. It worked in ways Susan never imagined. Back in Chicago, Daryl attended the progressive Francis W. Parker School, but she found her true sanctuary in movie theaters. Chronic insomnia meant she spent countless nights watching films. The darkness of the theater became her safe place, where her shyness didn't matter because nobody was looking at her. Cinema became her language, a way to understand emotions and connections that confused her in real life. By her teenage years, she knew what she wanted. Acting wasn't about fame, it was about becoming someone else, stepping into another skin where her awkwardness couldn't follow. It was liberation. At 17, Daryl moved to Los Angeles and enrolled at the University of Southern California, where she studied ballet and acting. Her dance training gave her a grace and physical presence that would become her trademark. In 1978, at 17, she made her film debut in Brian De Palma's horror film, The Fury. It was small, but it was a beginning. The replicant that changed everything. In 1982, director Ridley Scott was in pre-production on what would become one of the most influential science fiction films ever made. Blade Runner, based on Philip K. Dick's novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, was an ambitious, expensive gamble on a dark, philosophical vision of the future. The role of Pris, an acrobatic basic pleasure model, replicant with a violent streak, required someone who could embody contradictions. The character needed to be both beautiful and unsettling, both vulnerable and dangerous, both human and utterly artificial. Daryl Hannah walked into the audition at just 21 years old. With her striking, almost otherworldly features, her piercing blue-green eyes, and her extensive ballet training, she was unlike anyone else Scott had seen. She got the part, and it would change the trajectory of her career in ways nobody could have predicted. On set, Daryl did something remarkable that would define the character forever. The script mentioned that Pris had gymnastic abilities as part of her physical enhancements, but the specific moves weren't written out. Daryl, with her years of dance training and natural athleticism, created the character's physical vocabulary herself. Those haunting cartwheels, the way Pris moved through space like a broken doll, the gymnastic flips and movements that made her seem both graceful and threatening, all came from Daryl's imagination and skill. Ridley Scott, recognizing what he had, incorporated more and more of these movements into the film. The shoot was challenging. Daryl performed many of her own stunts, including the physically demanding fight sequences. The iconic look, the white coat and dark eye makeup, the blonde hair styled in that particular way, all contributed to creating a character that would haunt audiences for decades. When Blade Runner was released in June 1982, it was a commercial disappointment, and critics were sharply divided. The film's slow pace, its philosophical questions, its dark vision of the future, all of it confused audiences expecting a straightforward science fiction adventure. The studio had forced changes to Scott's vision, including the addition of a voiceover narration and a more upbeat ending. The film seemed destined to be forgotten, but Daryl's performance as Pris left an indelible impression. That image of her in the white coat, the way she moved, the scene where she attacks Harrison Ford's character, it was unforgettable. Over the years, as Blade Runner found new life on home video and was reassessed by critics, it became recognized as a masterpiece. Pris became one of cinema's most iconic characters, and Daryl's contribution to that legacy cannot be overstated. To this day, she considers Blade Runner her career high point. That same year, Daryl appeared in Summer Lovers, a steamy romance set in Greece about a young couple who enter into a relationship with a third person. The film showed her range, moving from the cold, mechanical Pris to a warm, sensual character, exploring freedom and passion. Hollywood was starting to take notice of this tall, blonde actress who could do it all.
I wouldn't say I was introverted, I was more out there somewhere. I was off in the dream world all the time.
Splash, the role that made her a star. 1984 was the year everything changed for Daryl Hannah. Ron Howard, already established as a skilled director after starting his career as a child actor, was helming a romantic comedy with an unusual premise, a man who falls in love with a mermaid. In 1984, this wasn't an obvious hit. The concept could have easily become silly or saccharine. The role required someone who could be otherworldly, yet relatable, funny, yet touching. Someone who could make audiences suspend their disbelief and fall in love with the impossible. That someone was Daryl Hannah, playing Madison the Mermaid opposite Tom Hanks, who was still in the early stages of what would become a legendary career. Daryl delivered a performance that was pure magic. The preparation was intense. She learned to swim mermaid style, keeping her legs together in a way that mimicked a tails movement. This was actually a skill she'd practiced since childhood because of her lifelong fascination with Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale, The Little Mermaid. The mermaid tail she wore in the film was fully functional and weighed over 35 pounds, making every underwater scene a physical challenge. Daryl did much of her own underwater work, spending hours submerged for the swimming sequences. But it was her acting that truly made the film work. Her comic timing was impeccable, finding humor in Madison's fish-out-of-water moments without ever making the character seem stupid or merely cute. Whether she was trying to eat a lobster shell and all, showing up naked at the Statue of Liberty after losing her dress in the water, struggling to navigate the chaos of New York City, or learning to speak English by watching television at Bloomingdale's, Daryl brought both humor and genuine heart to every scene. The romantic scenes with Hanks had real chemistry. When Madison finally reveals her true nature to Alan, and when they make the choice to go back to the sea together, Daryl sold the emotional stakes completely. You believed this mermaid had fallen in love with this man, and you believed she was making an enormous sacrifice. When Madison chose her name by looking at a street sign for Madison Avenue, it seemed like such a silly joke at the time. The perfect character moment for someone learning about the human world. But something completely unexpected happened. The name Madison, which had never been a common first name and had been considered almost comically inappropriate as a girl's name, suddenly became one of the most popular baby names in America after the film's release. Parents who'd seen the movie and fallen in love with the character started naming their daughters Madison. The trend didn't fade. It has remained in the top names for girls for decades, an enduring cultural impact that nobody saw coming. Splash was a massive hit, earning nearly $70 million at the box office against a modest budget. It was a word-of-mouth sensation, the kind of film people told their friends they had to see. Critics loved it, audiences loved it, and at the center of it all was Daryl Hannah, at just 23 years old, suddenly a bona fide movie star. The film was also notable for being the first release from a new studio called Touchstone Pictures, Disney's attempt to release more mature content. Its success helped launch the studio and proved that fairy tale romances could work for adult audiences. The golden years. The rest of the 1980s belonged to Daryl. In 1984, following Splash's success, she appeared in The Pope of Greenwich Village alongside Mickey Rourke and Eric Roberts, showing she could hold her own in grittier material. In 1986, she starred in The Clan of the Cave Bear, playing a Cro-Magnon woman. The film wasn't a hit, but it showed her willingness to transform herself completely. That same year, she appeared in Legal Eagles with Robert Redford and Deborah Winger. Then came 1987 and two films that would define her career. In Oliver Stone's Wall Street, Daryl played the girlfriend of Charlie Sheen's ambitious stockbroker. The film won an Academy Award, and became a cultural touchstone. Daryl received a Razzie Award nomination, but the film's success elevated her Hollywood status. More importantly, 1987 gave us Roxanne. In this modern retelling of Cyrano de Bergerac, Daryl starred opposite Steve Martin as the beautiful Roxanne. Martin's character feeds her romantic words she believes are coming from another man. Roger Ebert called Daryl's performance sweet and gentle, noting she brought depth to what could have been one-dimensional. In 1988, she starred in High Spirits opposite Peter O'Toole. Then, 1989 brought two significant films. She appeared in Woody Allen's Crimes and Misdemeanors, and then came Steel Magnolias. This ensemble piece with Sally Field, Shirley MacLaine, Dolly Parton, and Julia Roberts became an instant classic. Daryl played Annelle, the shy beautician who finds her voice and her faith. It was a quieter role, and she was wonderful in it. By decade's end, Daryl Hannah was everywhere. She'd worked with major directors, proven she could do comedy and drama, science fiction, and romance. She was dating Jackson Browne and even appeared in his music video for Tender is the Night. Life seemed perfect. The 90s, cracks in the foundation. The 1990s started with promise. Daryl appeared in Crazy People in 1990, a comedy starring Dudley Moore about an advertising executive who starts telling the truth in his ads. In 1991, she took on a more serious role in At Play in the Fields of the Lord, Hector Babenco's epic about missionaries in the Amazon, based on Peter Matthieson's novel. The film was a commercial failure, but it showed Daryl's commitment to more challenging, thoughtful material, even if it meant smaller paychecks and less visibility. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. In 1992, Daryl was discovered badly beaten, bruised, and injured in ways that suggested serious violence. Rumors immediately swirled that her then-boyfriend Jackson Browne, the celebrated singer-songwriter, had been responsible for the assault. The tabloids had a field day with the story, splashing it across their covers. The allegations were serious and damaging to both their reputations. Browne vehemently denied the accusations. In a legal battle that would stretch on for years, he sued Fox Television for defamation after they reported on the allegations. Browne ultimately prevailed in the lawsuit, with Fox issuing a public retraction. The truth of what happened that day may never be fully known. What is clear is that Daryl and Browne broke up that year, ending their 9-year relationship, and the incident cast a long shadow over both of their careers. For Daryl, the personal turmoil seemed to coincide with a professional shift. She continued working, but the quality and prominence of her roles began to diminish. In 1992, she appeared in Memoirs of an Invisible Man with Chevy Chase, a science fiction comedy that failed to find an audience. In 1993, she took on the lead role in the made-for-cable remake of Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, a campy take on the 1950s B-movie. It was fun, but it wasn't the kind of project that maintained her status as a serious actress.
10 feet deep in front of us, and I'm like, oh no, and Quentin says, jump it, and I'm like...
The Grumpy Old Men films in 1993 and 1995 were different. Playing the daughter of Jack Lemmon's character opposite Walter Matthau, Daryl was part of ensemble comedies that actually found audiences and made money. She won a Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress for the first film, recognition that she was still valued and appreciated. But these were supporting roles, not leads. She was playing someone's daughter, not the center of the story. Throughout the 1990s, from 1989 to 1994 specifically, Daryl was also romantically linked to John F. Kennedy Jr., the son of the late president and one of the most eligible bachelors in America. For 5 years, their on-and-off relationship kept her in the gossip columns and tabloids more than on critics' radar. When they finally broke up in 1994, it was another ending in what was becoming a decade of endings for Daryl. The rest of the decade brought more of the same. She appeared in The Tie That Bind in 1995, a thriller about adoptive parents facing the birth parents who want their child back. It went largely unnoticed. In 1996, she was in Too Much, a comedy with Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffith that also failed to make an impact. The films kept coming, but they were increasingly forgettable, the kind of movies that played briefly in theaters before vanishing to video store shelves. She tried theater, stepping onto the stage in London's West End for a 2000 production of The 7-Year Itch. The reviews were mixed at best. Some critics praised her beauty and stage presence. Others felt she was miscast. that the role required a different kind of performer. Either way, theater didn't become a new avenue for her career. She returned to film. But the films that came next were even smaller. By the early 2000s, Daryl was working more than ever, but in projects that rarely reached wide audiences. She appeared in smaller independent films, including John Sayles' Casa de los Babies in 2003, playing Skipper, an athletic woman haunted by 3 miscarriages, one of several Americans waiting in Mexico to adopt babies. She also appeared in Sayles' political satire, Silver City, in 2004. These were the kinds of thoughtful, character-driven films she'd always wanted to make, but they played at art houses and film festivals, not multiplexes. In 2002, she played Mandy Moore's mother in the teen drama A Walk to Remember. It was a supporting role in a film aimed at teenagers, a far cry from being the lead in mainstream films. That same year, she appeared in Dancing at the Blue Iguana, a gritty drama about strippers in Los Angeles. Daryl played Angel, a troubled, exotic dancer, and she prepared intensely for the role, reportedly performing live at various Los Angeles strip clubs. The film was improvised and aimed for raw authenticity, but its high nudity factor overshadowed any artistic ambitions it might have had. She appeared in the Polish Brothers North Fork in 2003, playing the regal, empathetic hermaphrodite Flower Hercules, one of 4 apparent angels who visit the dreams of a boy in a 1950s Montana town, about to be obliterated by a new dam. It was a strange, beautiful film that showcased Daryl's willingness to take risks and play unusual characters. But again, it was a film for cinephiles, not general audiences. At 43, Daryl made another bold choice. She posed nude for Playboy magazine, the September 2003 issue. It was a statement that she still had the beauty and confidence that had made her a star, that she wasn't afraid of aging or being seen. The spread got attention, but it didn't translate into better roles. If anything, it reinforced Hollywood's tendency to see her more as a beautiful object than as a serious actress. Later, in a brutally honest 2010 interview with The Guardian, Daryl admitted that the lowest point in her career came in these years. She'd taken roles in numerous direct-to-video movies, films that bypassed theaters entirely and went straight to DVD rental shelves. She did them for the money, pure and simple. Doing some films just for the cash, she said, which hopefully went straight to video and no one ever saw. It was a painful admission from someone who'd once been one of Hollywood's most sought-after stars. The work was there, but the quality wasn't, and she knew it.
I don't want you to fall.
No, I'm
All
good.
right.
Because I'm not moving that foot other than to go.
The Kill Bill resurrection? Then, in 2003, an old friend came calling. Quentin Tarantino had a role for Daryl in his ambitious 2-part revenge epic Kill Bill. She would play Elle Driver, a one-eyed assassin and member of the deadly Viper assassination squad that the bride, played by Uma Thurman, must face. With her signature eye patch and ruthless demeanor, Daryl created one of the most memorable characters of her career. Elle Driver was cold, calculating, completely unrepentant. The bathroom fight scene between Daryl and Uma Thurman in Kill Bill, Volume 2, is brutal and brilliant. Daryl won a second Saturn Award for the role. It seemed like a career resurrection was at hand. She was back in a high-profile film with a major director, getting the best reviews in years. At 43, she even did a nude spread in Playboy, showing she still had the confidence and beauty that made her a star. But the expected renaissance never came. Instead of leading to more high-profile roles, Kill Bill seemed to be the end of something rather than the beginning. The truth behind the fall. For years, people assumed Daryl's career decline was simply about Hollywood's treatment of aging actresses. While that's part of the story, there was something much darker at play. In 2017, as the Me Too movement swept through Hollywood, Daryl Hannah added her voice to the chorus of women speaking out against Harvey Weinstein. She told The New Yorker about multiple incidents of harassment during Kill Bill's production. During one Cannes Film Festival, Weinstein pounded on her hotel room door so aggressively that she escaped through a back entrance. The next night, he returned, and she barricaded herself inside. Years later, around Kill Bill, Volume 2's premiere, Weinstein used a key to enter her hotel room uninvited while she was with her makeup artist. Daryl believes Weinstein sabotaged her career in retaliation for refusing his advances. After Kill Bill, offers dried up. Roles that came were smaller, less significant. The blacklist felt real. But there was another factor. In 2013, she revealed publicly what she'd kept private for decades: her childhood autism diagnosis. The debilitating shyness made public appearances excruciating. Interviews, talk shows, red carpets were torture. "I've never been comfortable being the center of attention," she told People magazine. She'd kept her diagnosis secret, fearing it would affect her career. Acting was joy, a way to become someone else. But being famous, being Daryl Hannah the celebrity, was something she'd never wanted. She also maintained strict principles. As a lifelong vegetarian and environmental activist, she demanded eco-conscious production practices and boycotted projects associated with human rights or environmental abuses. Admirable, but not good for business in an industry where flexibility is rewarded. Finding a new path. While Hollywood was moving on without her, Daryl was finding purpose elsewhere. Her environmental activism, always present, became her primary focus in the 2000s and 2010s. She founded DH Love Life, a website dedicated to educating people about sustainable living. She marched against the Keystone XL pipeline, spoke at the UN Climate Change Summit, and appeared at conferences worldwide. In 2012, she served as executive producer on the documentary Greedy Lying Bastards about climate change denial. She was arrested multiple times for her activism, most notably in 2013 alongside Robert F. Kennedy Jr. She served on boards of multiple environmental organizations and founded the Sustainable Biodiesel Alliance. Her activism was genuine. Daryl lived off the grid in Malibu in a solar-powered home with a biodiesel vehicle, practicing what she preached even if it meant being called difficult by an industry that valued conformity. Then in 2014, Daryl began a relationship with legendary musician Neil Young. The timing was controversial. Young had just filed for divorce from his wife of 36 years. David Crosby, Young's former bandmate, called Daryl a purely poisonous predator, though he later apologized. But Neil and Daryl didn't care. They'd bonded over their shared passion for environmental activism and their art. In 2018, they married secretly on Young's boat in the San Juan Islands, with 100 guests, including Joni Mitchell and Stephen Stills. The ceremony was held under a nearly full moon, and Young serenaded his bride with Harvest Moon. Guests left their phones and cameras at their hotels. It was intimate and perfect. Daryl and Neil moved to Ontario, Canada, living on a quiet property far from Los Angeles chaos. Daryl has directed several films about Neil, including Paradox in 2018 and Barn in 2021. She still acts occasionally, appearing in the Netflix series Sense8 in 2015, but her priorities have clearly shifted.
There's nothing more common than undiscovered genius.
The legacy. In 2019, Daryl Hannah received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, recognition that came decades after her biggest successes. Looking back at her career, it's impossible not to feel a sense of what might have been. What if Weinstein hadn't been allowed to destroy careers? What if Hollywood valued older actresses the way it values older actors? What if Daryl hadn't been fighting against her own nature every time she stepped into the spotlight? But perhaps those questions miss the point. Daryl Hannah didn't fall because she failed. She stepped away because she found something more important than fame. She chose principles over paychecks, activism over red carpets, a quiet life in Canada with the man she loves over the grinding machinery of Hollywood. She's been honest about the struggles and compromises of navigating an industry that wasn't designed for someone like her. Today, at 63, Daryl seems content. She's still creating, still fighting for causes she believes in, still living according to her values. She told The Telegraph in 2007, "I feel fulfilled in my life. I love what I do. I'd love to do more of it, but I don't feel desperate, like I need validation." That's perhaps the most important lesson from Daryl Hannah's story. Success isn't just about staying on top. It's about knowing when to step away, when to choose yourself over what others expect. Hollywood may have forgotten Daryl Hannah, the movie star, but Daryl Hannah, the person, has built a life that matters to her. The mermaid who captured our hearts in 1984 didn't disappear. She simply swam to deeper, quieter waters, where the glare of fame couldn't reach her, where she could finally be herself. If you enjoyed learning about Daryl Hannah's incredible journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories about the stars who shaped our memories. Until next time, keep the memories alive.